Hey, we had a little bit of technical difficulty here, but back to Scott. What was your thought there, buddy, on we're talking about Ohio State versus Alabama national title game?
Well, I will pick up where we left off about how no team will go on to win, or very rarely, times throughout college football history where teams can really go out and win like 3 championships in a row. I go back to 2014 after we won our national title and all the talent that we had on our team. So a buddy of mine says, I think we're going to win the next 2. I'm like, I don't think we're going to win 3 in a row. It just really never happens, and to also play off of that, every team, has had their ass kicked at some point in time. Clemson's got kicked last week, and then of course Bama, even mighty Bama, lost 44-16 versus Clemson in 2018. So I mean, now last time Ohio State got their ass kicked by a good team was 2016. But as I explained earlier, we really should have lost 31-6. We had those 2 missed field goals instead of 31-0. The thing is, I think this is going to be a close playoff game. I think it is, especially how we played last week. I think we were playing with a ton of confidence, much more confidence than we had coming into the national title game. And now I still stick by the fact that I think there really should be, to make it a more national sport, to make it even bigger, I think it should be an 18 playoff. But as far as that goes right now, I'm all for anything that helps Ohio State. But I think going into this, I feel a lot better than we did. It is still Bama, and it's still Nick Saban, so it's going to be a very tall challenge. As tough as it was against Clemson, Bama's got a better team than Clemson this year. They just do. So I think they are. We can take advantage of them defensively, but their offense is going to be able to score right there with us. So I will give you my prediction is going to be Ohio State covers, because I think I saw some stat earlier this week that the last 8 out of the last 9 times Ohio State was an underdog in a big game like this. Not only did we win, but we covered it and we won. So my score for the game is going to be 48-45 Ohio State, and we have our 9th national championship.
God, great. All right, Sean, what you think, buddy? Nick Saban versus Ryan Day.
Well, I think I think a common thing that both me and Scott have hit on, I think not only today, but I've certainly thought for weeks, is that football, even if it's more dominated by offense now, it's still very much one in the trenches. And so I think the winner of this, I think their defense is going to have just a few more stops than the opposing defense did. But that said, I think this game, to me, the biggest factor is Justin Fields going to be ready to go or not. I mean, if he is, and if he plays like he did last week, then I think they can beat Bama, to be completely honest with you. I think their defense, especially their defensive line, is better than Bama's. I think their linebackers are probably better as well. To me, it's just how hurt is Justin Fields, how hurt is that shoulder? If he's, ready to go, I think Ohio State wins it somewhere like by 3 to 7 points. I'm going to say 42-37 Ohio State.
Oh, wow. 2 Ohio State picks, huh? All right, well, I go on the back end. Ohio State versus Alabama. Justin Fields is a beast. Me being a Georgia fan, do I want to hear about Justin Fields transferring from Georgia and all the smack talk on Kirby Smart? No. Do I want to hear Alabama wins again? 7th national title. Breaks the Bears record, Nick Saban? No. So I'm kind of torn. Mac Jones has been a beast all year. Very accurate. Najee Harris, great. Devontae Smith coming off Heisman Trophy. I did want to ask this, Scott, before I make my prediction. How's it looking with the COVID numbers? Any cases for Ohio State from what you read?
He still says we have a lot of good players that can play, which means nothing to me, which says to me, hey, I'm not going to tell you anything or give you any advantage until we have to go and tell the television folks that day. Now, before you make your prediction, I'm going to ask you a question, Trey, because I know where you live. Do you have any really good friends of yours that are Alabama fans?
Not really. We don't really have that many. I think Sean had his old lawyer buddy, but not any obnoxious ones that talk us a lot of trash, and I'm dodging text.
So
no.
That also says to me a lot of your friends can read and write.
Okay. I like that.
No, I'm asking you. I don't know, because I was just,
I have
You
some
have a
South
mix of
Carolina.
friends
I love how he said he's got a mix. So,
I
you know, it's like 50-50 between those who can read and write and those who can't.
mean, I got
Great.
some South
Okay.
Carolina. I got some Clemson fans. I got some Tennessee fans. I guess they can't. They can kind of read and write.
So let me explain my joke, and I think Sean already got it, but I'll go a little bit further if you haven't picked up on it yet. I was saying that maybe some Alabama fans can't read and write. Is it funnier now after I explain it?
It is fine.
I think he's a little insulted, maybe.
All right, back to my pick. 8-point spread. Another interesting thing I want to throw out there that could make a difference is we'll talk about here in a little bit. So Tom Herman's fired to Texas, and Steve Sarkisian takes over for University of Texas. So is he focused on this game? He doesn't know anything to Alabama, like Kirby Smart when they beat 2016. They beat Clemson, but he gave up almost 500 yards on his defense. So was he focused? Is Steve Sarkisian focused? It could be some distraction. But at the end of the day, I think that could be a little bit of a nugget there. So is Bama at the end of the day? I think they can definitely score Ohio State. It's going to be a shootout. I'm going 45-41. Alabama wins, but doesn't cover. I'll take Ohio State in the points, but 45-41, Nick Saban gets number 7 in a shootout. This is going to be like a heavyweight battle. It should be fun to watch.
By the way, are you guys more surprised that there's not more talk about, like, Saban breaking the Bears' national championship record? I mean, you figure it'd be, like, a bigger topic of discussion, you know, especially in this area where, you know, they're always desperate to find something to talk about. Like, I haven't seen anybody mention it.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't brought that up. I haven't thought about that either. But of course, now all the talk is about the playoffs, which meaning the NFL playoffs. Okay, which is why, you know, that's a whole other subject. Which, if they expand that playoff into 8 teams, should they go and start the playoffs even earlier because all these other meaningless bowl games? Why not start the playoffs earlier, meaning college football playoffs? So then you're done by January 1st, because right now there's not as much talk now because everybody in all the national networks are talking about all these NFL playoffs coming up. And so that's now, you know, come Monday and the 12-hour pregame show, you know, because I know I'm going to be very productive both Monday and Tuesday at work, and definitely Tuesday 100% hungover. So hopefully hungover and happy in lieu of hungover and sad. But so I think that's part of the reason that, you know, because you have to talk about so much NFL talk playoff that they really haven't brought it up about Saban going to break the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be a great game. So I guess we got 2 Ohio State picks to my Alabama pick. So I won't lose sleep over that, but let's jump into, this is interesting. It's a little nugget for you. Throw this in there. Hey, bowl season conference standings records. Where I wanted to go to this, the alpha in the room, because they started off, this is the best conference earlier in the year. How about this there? Scott, Sean? ACC 0-6, and they had 2 teams in the playoffs. Hey, Big Ten 3-1. SAC 6-2. Big 12.
Well, we didn't have as
5-0.
many teams.
So I just thought this was interesting because it's a good parameter or measurement of.
What's a parameter?
It's a good measurement.
Is that like one of those? Is that one of those tomato, potato, barometer?
It's a good barometer. It's a good measurement of how the teams finish the conferences. And how about this? No bias. I know we hadn't had the national team. Let's not throw the national championship game. Sean or Scott, who do you think the best conference was? I just wanted to bring that up as a little debate this year.
Well, I already went from top to bottom. Boy, I mean, you know what? I mean, obviously, we didn't play as many games, so I got to put the Big Ten right there at the SEC because we're 3-1, and you played it twice as many games. That's the only reason you're 6-2, right? I can tell you who's not, the ACC.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 looks like a pile of poo, you know. So
You said a pile of poo.
I said a pile of poo.
How about Big 12, 5-0? They could say they're the best, but they didn't even have anybody in the playoffs.
Well, that's true. Now, if Oklahoma can, who are their losses to? Iowa State and somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Who else beat them?
Who
Did Texas beat them? Was that a shootout? Who won that game?
Texas
Oklahoma State
won that one.
Oklahoma State beat them? Who did beat them?
No, it wasn't Oklahoma State.
Was it Oklahoma?
Who was it? Now I'm curious. You know, I mean, do you have that in front of you there, Trey? I
can,
know they lost to
pull it
Iowa
up.
State. I know they
Did they
lost
lose
to
to
Iowa
Kansas
State.
as well?
Hold on.
It was somebody unexpected.
All right. Well, anyway,
it's Kansas State. It was Kansas State.
That's
right. Hey, the old school Skeletor almost came out. All right. So if you had to pick, you're gonna still go with your beloved Big Ten? Best conference?
Yes.
I think a lot depends on Monday too.
Okay.
All right. I like it. Hey, Sean, what's your – go ahead.
Well, you know my thoughts on it. If we lose to Bama, not the rest of the SEC, and I already pointed that out earlier.
And we would be – would you count this as – would you count this
well,
as
but
a
I
bowl
think
game?
he's talking about like it'll be settled, like maybe the tiebreaker is settled in the national title.
How about
game.
this, Sean? Does this count – or Scott, does this count as a would it be 6.5 wins to 2 or 7 wins or 6 and 3? Does this count as a bowl game? Because I guess it's the national title game. So
yes, I count this as a bowl game.
All right. Something. All right. How about he's gonna go Big Ten? What he like, Sean? Best conference from what you've seen, top to bottom.
For the year?
Yeah. Or it depends on.
I don't know. Like, first of all, to me, it's just subjective, right? And the thing is, if you're going to use bowls as a parameter of it, like, you know, there is some truth to what Dan Mullen was saying. Like, his team did not care about that bowl game at all. Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest, we really didn't care that much about the Peach Bowl, although we
got the win, though,
talented
man.
it. Yeah. You know, I mean, it kind of depends on when you catch teams and like their incentive for, you know, a game.
Yeah.
That can be true, but that also shouldn't be used as an excuse after the game, like in Florida's case, after you get your ass kicked 55-20.
Yeah, 5 touchdowns. You know? They had a better roster than 5 touchdowns. They quit. They don't want to be there.
It sounds, and you know, Sean, it sounds a little bit better coming from a Georgia fan. Like, well, we didn't care that much about that game, but you still won.
Yeah, we won.
Versus a good team. You could make the argument that Cincinnati's a better team than Oklahoma this year. Maybe
but I
mean,
that's the argument, though. Like, is Cincinnati really that good of a team if, like, they played an opponent that was relatively apathetic and, like, they still beat you?
Hmm.
Yeah. That's
a good point.
If we were actually motivated.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm with you on that. Another reason to expand the playoffs. But to that point, it sounds you should, as a coach, you still shouldn't use that as an excuse after the game. Because Clemson, they can't say, hey, we weren't motivated. I'm like, you're going to say that after you get your ass kicked?
That'd be hilarious if Dave said, well, you know, we beat them so many times. We're just kind of bored with it. We're like, oh, we have to play them again.
All I'm saying is it sounds like sour grapes after a big loss. You know, in lieu of going into it, you're like, well, hey, you know, I should have had them, you know, more excited for the game. If only they hired –
it's terrible as a coach to say that. Like, it's different, like, when you're, you know, an armchair quarterback like we are, when you can say, yeah, they really didn't seem like they cared.
When you say armchair quarterback, do you actually mean experts outside of the football arena? If only these universities hired someone to motivate these young men to get them excited for the games and pay them millions of dollars. Would you call that like a coach?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, since we've been talking about that.
Is this the last segment, Trey?
No, I'm gonna go with no, it's not. I'm gonna go with 6-2 SEC. And since we were bringing this up, how would you do the expanded 8 teams, Scott? So would you do like 1 versus 8, and would you play less than 12 games? Because that would be a grind of a series or a grind of a year, and you're gonna play extra 2 or 3 games. How would you format that? Just wondering.
I mean, I would still, as I laid out last week, I'll go ahead and touch on it briefly again. I would still go ahead, you win your conference and you're in. Okay, and I would still go ahead. I mean, I'll just use, hey, I don't care. Let's use the Big Ten as an example. We think the Big Ten sucks this year. Okay, and so whoever wins the Big Ten, or let's just say a 3-loss, let's say Northwestern beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. Okay, we'll put them in, and you think they're the 8th seed, put them in the 8th seed. And whether those are, I mean, you still have, everybody makes it sound like, oh, it's going to be so difficult. I mean, they call it the New Year's Six, right? Mm-hmm. You've got all the bowl games now to play these. So if there's 8 teams, right, that means there's 4 games and there's New Year's 6 games. And then guess what you're going to do? And then after that, there's going to be 4 teams left, and you play in the other 2 New Year's 6 games. Sure. And then you go play the national title. And I'm all for, if you want to then grow the sport, play it earlier in the year. And like I said before, I mean, I still think that every Power 5 team should play, one team from the other Power 5 conferences, and those be 4 out of conference, games they schedule, or even just half of those out of conferences. Instead of these, like we have Akron, Tulsa next year, and you guys have what? Georgia has South Carolina State, and I don't know who the other sacrificial lamb
Charleston
is you're bringing in.
Southern, yeah, something like that.
We are playing though Clemson though.
We got Clemson first game.
Well, that's true. And we have Oregon. So there you go. You have one from the ACC. We have one from the Pac-12. Okay.
Yeah.
So regardless, I mean, everyone's, I don't know if we can do it. You already have all the bowl games, and you can see the players don't care as much when the playoff. They can't get into the playoff. They say, hey, we're just going to sit it out. We're going to prepare for the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's what I would do, and I would start the games. Hey, put an extra week in there. Play them like a couple days before Christmas, and then play in the New Year's. And then if you want to have the other one be later, but as it is, Sean brings up a great point earlier. It's like you still don't know. Nobody's talking about Nick Saban being the record, and even like some of the other stuff on ESPN right now. They're not talking a ton about the national title game, but they will a lot on Monday. Yeah. So I'm all for playing these games during the year. But then if you have, under my scenario, if you have 3 at-large teams, then you would have, if let's say Ohio State loses the Big Ten championship, but we think they're good enough to be in, that was their only loss. Okay, fine, because of the body of work, and put them in. And and then Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, the auctioneer, we can go and put them in, and then you put Cincinnati in. So you're still gonna have 3 at large, and just go ahead and rank them all.
Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, hopefully they expand to an 18 playoff. Maybe they'll look at that down the road, but it's always good to look at the bowl seasons, our conferences, how they end up. Talk about this because this just happened. I think it was a little surprising. So Scott's second favorite team, Michigan, it gives an extension to Harbaugh. A lot of people thought he'd be moving on to the NFL. What's your guys' thoughts on this, Scott? We'll start with you.
Would you like to go first, or would you like me to?
There you go.
I would follow up Trey's. The only thing I would ask, or add to it is like, dude, what the hell are they thinking? Why would you give him an extension?
Yeah.
I know Scott's got to love it as an Ohio State fan because the guy's not exactly
I think
impressive.
They were talking about, and this is not even a joke, lifetime contract. I'm like, works for me, by all means. Yeah. I have a lifetime contract for Jim Harbaugh.
It's amazing how dumb they've become. I mean, there was a point when they were, like a legit, powerhouse in college football. And it's kind of like, Scott doesn't really care, but it's kind of like sad to see how far they've like fallen.
He's only 49-22 in 6 seasons. And Scott, what's the? I mean, it's not even a rivalry anymore. What have you guys beaten them like 20 out of 22 or something like that? I could be off.
It's not like Trey. It's not like I know exactly what the record is. But if I were to just go ahead and take a stab at it, I would say that we lost in 2000. Okay, and then our coach John Cooper got fired at the end of the year. Okay, at Ohio State, and then since then we've lost twice. Tressel as a coach lost to him once in 2003, and then the last time we lost was Luke Fickell when he was an interim coach for 1 year, and that was 2011. And and then we won, and then Urban went 7-0, and Ryan Day right now is currently 1-0 only because they didn't play the game this year. And everybody says, oh, the old time series. And I think they're up. The old time series, they're up like 7 or 8 games or something. But what people don't realize is that, I don't know, I mean, the series started either in the late 1800s or early 1900s. They won something like the first 20 games or like 17 out of the first 20 games or something. But, since like, the 1930s or whatever it was, hey, that's when it really became, a bigger rivalry. So, I mean, it's still a rivalry because –
there you go, Scott. Look at that beatdown. Look at all the red right there. There it is.
Yeah, that is a bunch of red.
That's two since 2000. We're probably high school and college. Beatdown.
Yes. If you were listening to what I said, Trey, I already explained that. But thank you for the graphic.
No, I wanted to bring that up. What was this? What was this right here? They got this little thing here, asterisk. What is that? I just noticed it. What happened in 2010? That's
a special year. Apparently, if your players get free tattoos, then they don't like to count the win.
Why is that? I was just wondering. What does that mean? You probably know. 30.
They said
I
they're
think
not
they're
going to
saying that
count it because
they vacated Ohio State's win.
Okay.
yes, that was the Terrell Pryor vacation, which led to Jim Tressel resigning, interim coach Luke Fickell, and then Urban Meyer. So what I will say here are my thoughts, okay? And first I'll talk about fan bases just in general, and then come back to Michigan. Look, all fan bases have delusional fans and assholes. And if somebody's out there saying, "Hey, I'm not our fan base. That's not true about our fan base," then I have bad news. If you don't think that's true about your fan base, then you are a delusional asshole. Okay. Now my rule with all these different teams is these are just my rule. Everything resets when you get a new coach, the culture, etc. Now Michigan football is still Michigan football. Okay. And Alabama is still Alabama. No, just hear what I have to say. Alabama is still Alabama, but everything resets with a new coach. You can reset the culture. You can do everything. Now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? I mean, take for example, I'll pick on Notre Dame again. Charlie White comes in and he's like, "Hey, everything's going to change." You know, he was an arrogant prick and he had all the answers. And hey, but he's a good fit for Notre Dame being that arrogant prick. But when it comes to developing his players, not so good. Now, he had a lot of great recruits that he came in. But believe it or not, Michigan has legit facilities. They have big donors. They have everything you need to have a great college football program. But you got Harbaugh, who actually is bringing in some pretty decent recruits, but he doesn't develop any of his players. He doesn't develop his quarterbacks. So we joke around that when they go to Michigan, that's the best they're ever going to be. So they're not going to really develop. If they were good going in there, then great. Now, the thing they did have a change is their defensive coordinator, who we loved because we kicked his ass every year. He's now in Arizona because apparently Arizona has lower expectations than Michigan. So, you know, he actually has a pretty decent record. Harbaugh does. But, you know, he's like, 0-5 versus Michigan. Now, how do I know this? I know this because John Cooper only won like 2 games. He was like 2-10-1 against Michigan. So that was John Cooper with Ohio State. And so during those John Cooper years, hey, we couldn't beat Michigan. We couldn't win a bowl game. Okay. And then Tressel comes in, your expectations get reset. He comes in and he says, you know what? He knew exactly how. I was at the basketball game when he made the announcement. Okay, Ohio State's basketball game, when they were introducing Jim Tressel, I was at the game. He made the announcement, is you're going to be proud of our players off the field and on the field 310 days from now in Ann Arbor. So he called his shot, and then he won in 2001. And as we brought up, the only time Tressel lost to him was at Michigan in 2003. Well, he comes in, he beats Michigan, they win the national title, but then he has, you know, as his career goes on, he has trouble with the college football league. And I know that from Florida, and national championship 2006, LSU, national championship 2007, and USC, you know, and even though it wasn't a bowl game, 2008, we got our ass kicked early in that year. But then everything reset when Urban Meyer came in. Okay, so he goes and he wins. I mean, now it's still Ohio State. So you got to have, you know, still have a good program, but, you know, he wins a national championship, but he doesn't really show up for those big games. Okay? I mean, he doesn't show up for a game every year against Purdue or Iowa. Not only do we lose, we get our ass kicked. So the thing with Ryan Day now is it resets again. I mean, his story hasn't been, you know, written yet. He's only lost 1 game, a very close game last year to Clemson. So everything goes and it changes, you know, every year. And that kind of goes like with Georgia as well, as you've seen. You know, Mark Richt, how many years was he at Georgia?
15 or 16, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was 15 or 16. Well, he's kind of like your John Cooper. He won a bunch of games, but he didn't win a national title. Exactly. Now, Kirby
played for one.
Though I like to, is there? I meant to ask you: is there a requirement in the SEC that a certain number of coaches have to work golf?
There is actually. It's got to be at least one at all times.
Okay, well, I thought that's what it was because you don't see that anywhere else in college football.
It's the visor, man.
Kirby, yes, of course. But the thing with Kirby is, hey, look, he took you to a national title game. You know, and all jokes aside, besides that second half, you know, his story is, you know, yet to be written. I hear a lot of excuses for why he loses to the SEC. But, you know, his story is, I mean, there is no doubt that he has the talent, okay? It's just a matter of what are you going to do to get over the hump. I mean, Clemson, they went to their Clemsoning or their Tommy Bowden, and now they got their pizza parties with Dabo. But Dabo, all jokes aside, hey, he's brought them to a national power they hadn't seen yet. Now, every fan base – what's that?
It's 1-2. Yes, sir.
Yes, that's right.
Save and kill it.
You know, I always think it's screwed up to have other fan bases tell you what your fan base expectations should be. So Alabama, hey, you know, they have what is it? how many national titles? 16, 17. So they have a reason to think that, hey, you should go and set those high expectations. Now, I had a customer of mine who was an NC State grad,
Oh,
and you
wow.
would talk about expectations being way off. I said, well, what are your expectations as an NC State fan? We should be winning championships, he says. I said,
Oh, wow.
ACC championship?
You can't
I said,
even beat Kentucky in a bowl game.
I'm like, have you ever been in the ACC championship? You can check that. I don't think they have.
No.
So, everything resets when you have a new coach. Now, what do I think? I think some coaches are better in the NFL because they don't have to develop players as much, or they get them right out of college. And you saw that with Jim Harbaugh, and he hasn't done anything yet in college. Outside of when he was at Stanford, when he had Andrew Luck, but they haven't brought along a great quarterback. And so you're kind of, like I said, Charlie Weiss, it was such a big deal. And then, so when it comes back to somebody like Steve Sarkisian, Texas has all the money in the world. They got the Longhorn Network. Notre Dame wants to talk about their NBC contract, but they have the Longhorn Network. So they really should be able to go get the best coach. But I just don't know if he's going to have any more success than what Tom Herman did.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we can transition into that. That was
well, and actually, if I can add something there, like, and I don't know, like, we're in a rather, I think something's got to be talked about candidly is, he's a recovering alcoholic. He'll always be a recovering alcoholic. And is it worth, is this a risk that Texas really needed to take? To me, it's almost similar to, it's a similar situation to, Hugh Freeze at Liberty, and then, what Lane Kiffin at Florida International had to do, where, you'd almost rather see him test himself at a lower level and see. Because, people are quick to forget that both, Sark and then Lane were at, an elite program, with USC. And that USC program was loaded at that time. And, they kind of collectively ran it into the ground. Now, maybe for Sark's part, you could argue that some of that was, the alcohol-related stuff, but he wasn't real great at Washington either. And, maybe you can argue that part of that's, the alcohol as well. But, if he was having issues, clearly Washington wasn't picking up on it. And, what was his nickname then? Like 7-win Sark or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe it's a different era. It's, offense is a little bit easier or a little bit more dominant now. Maybe that caters to him. But, I do kind of worry about having, a recovering alcoholic taking over a program with just insane expectations like Texas is going to have.
Yeah, Scott, since we're Big 12 here, what did you think about the hire? Did you think Tom Herman, it was time to go? I know he was not meeting the expectations. What's your thought? Texas, big time program.
Well, he just didn't have enough big wins. He did great at Houston. He did great at a smaller program. And then you wonder, some people take that jump. Urban, for example, did great at Utah before they were in the Pac-12. Okay, and then he went to Florida, 2 national titles. Well, that worked out pretty well. Okay, but and when he was at Houston, he beat Oklahoma and he beat, I think, Florida State in the bowl game. So everybody's like, hey, remember, is he going to go to LSU or is he going to go to Texas? And so he ended up going to Texas, and why not? Because they got all the money in the world. So they paid him to, they're paying him national championship money. Where's my national title? That's the same way Jim Harbaugh's getting paid, but he's not delivering. Oh. So now it's kind of like, hey, we'll bring you back, but at lesser money. So I think that I still, maybe I'll be wrong, but because, yes, this is a different, kind of like Sean talked about, Steve Sarkisian at Washington and Steve Sarkisian at USC. He didn't have a ton of success, So, is he that much different now that he's sober? Maybe he is. And maybe it's better the second go around. But I almost think the guy from Iowa State, Matt Campbell, yeah. Who, ironically, here's the story about him. He grew up in Ohio, went to a Division III college there, Mount Union. His father was the principal of my high school, Rick Campbell. Okay? Oh, so wow. Now what do I think? I think that's probably who Texas should have hired, because he's having success at Iowa State, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Or you really, and I'm not trying to give any ideas, because I'm all for Michigan's misery. But if Harbaugh leaves, then you ought to have Matt Campbell go over there if you want to have success. Now, I'm all for him staying at Iowa State Cyclones, but I mean, they really need a guy like that that's going to be better for a college program.
Yeah, completely agree. But even looking at the record comparison here, Herman 54-22, not bad, but not where they want to be. And then Sarkisian 46-35 while he was at Washington and USC. So not really blowing your hair back.
Well, and I'll be
Now,
honest,
Sean,
I'm not exactly impressed with the way Texas handled it either. I mean, it's like they deliberately waited until after our early signing period ended, which, we all know is when 80% of the recruits sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then you choose to let them go and, to bring in his
kids.
successor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was cheap.
And they also said, oh, hey, we thought they were going to get Urban Meyer. Then after they didn't get Urban Meyer,
Yeah.
then it was like, well, I guess we're committed to Tom Herman for another week or two.
Exactly.
And then, and then you let them go. So it's kind of, Now, my other question for you, Sean, you said with Hugh Freeze, you said, he's not an alcoholic. Is he a recovering sexaholic or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's clearly a flawed individual. But meaning that he had some, and he was really different than Sark and Kiffin in that he's somebody who had noticeable on-field success as a coach. I mean, I think he beat Bama 2 years in a row, which I mean, I don't even know the last time anybody that's has actually done that in the SEC. But
I'm going to give you a guarantee. I'm going to give you a guarantee within the next 2 years, Hugh Freeze is going to be at a big program.
Okay.
Whether it's the SEC or not, he's going to be at a big program. As long as, he's married and he's got 5 kids. I think now he knows, which apparently he didn't know at the time, because I know he's a religious guy and likes to tweet out Bible verses, which is fine. Tim Tebow does the same thing. But
Wow.
Tim Tebow, I'm pretty sure, doesn't call up prostitutes on his work phone. Maybe he does. I don't know. If he hasn't, I mean, apparently that's frowned upon when you're going and coaching young men. So what's funny is I also had a customer of mine that he was a big Arkansas fan. He was always telling me what a big Arkansas fan he is, and I actually got him tickets to Arkansas where they played in a bowl game here in Charlotte. Okay, fantastic. And then all of a sudden, Bobby Petrino drives off a motorcycle with his young girlfriend there, who was not his wife. And now all of a sudden, then Arkansas, let's take a look at Arkansas's record this year from the SEC, 3-7. Better than I think it's probably better than last year, surprisingly. But what I'm saying is the hypocrisy of it all. My customer is a little bit what they call a fair weather fan, because you talk about Arkansas, because I'm Arkansas and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, he didn't really talk about Clemson too much. And then Clemson comes up, well, I'm really more of a Clemson fan. This is him a couple years ago. Well, it's a lot easier to be a Clemson fan right now than an Arkansas fan, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Very good points. Hey, let's do some quick hitters here. We're getting close to the time here. Hey, Sean, interesting.
Did you say let's do some quick hooters?
Quick hitters.
All right.
Quick hooters. All right. Hey, Auburn Cadillac Williams, former Auburn great running back coach. So I don't think we'll have to worry about Dale McGee going to the barn, right? This is football scoop. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's big. I mean, he was
it's good.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. I mean,
but we don't have to worry about it.
Kenny coach and Kenny recruit, right? That's going to be the name of the game.
Hey, how about this? Does this hurt us at all? University of Georgia player personnel assistant Darren Montgomery has joined Arizona. Hey, is this like a small tree fell in the forest in the woods?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear it, so I have no idea who the hell that is.
Exactly. Hey, Harbaugh 5-year extension, which we touched on, is crazy.
What's it for?
5-year extension, is it $4 million base salary or something?
If it's $4 million, then I think it went down, because before I think you can go check his old contract. I think it was $7 million a year.
Sean is scared of Auburn. Sean Lexi. So Derek Mason, former Vanderbilt coach, is now a defensive coordinator at Auburn, and Mike Bobo transitions from South Carolina to Auburn. What's your thoughts on that, Sean? You thought those were really good hires by the new coach for Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, Derek Mason was a great DC at Stanford, and then they were pretty spunky. The defense was when he was at Vanderbilt. So I mean, you'd have to think that with a an increase or an upgrade in talent, that it'll kind of be more of the same. I think Bobo makes a lot of sense. It's a home run hit.
Got Bo Nix, one more year.
Well, and I mean, he is, he's a quarterback coach. He's a great
one more
recruiter,
year. He's not going to go pro after that.
Was
he got
junior?
2 more years of Bo Nix.
Wait, is it how long has he been there? Is it 2 years, 3 years? Oh yeah,
he's been there 2.
Okay, my bad. Yeah. Well, I was about to say he still but basically got Bo Nix. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, just the new coach is from the West Coast. He doesn't really have a lot of recruiting connections. Yeah. A lot of Auburn's recruits do come from Georgia and Florida and that area, all territories where, Bobo's recruited for both, Georgia and South Carolina. So I think that's a good pickup for them.
And then who's this Marcus Satterfield? I know the Louisville coach is Satterfield, right? Anyway, he's going to be the new OC for South Carolina. Does that ring a bell, Sean?
Nope.
Is that another tree that just fell in the forest?
Yeah.
Because I didn't hear it.
Because, see, Bobo is at South Carolina. We know Bobo, former Georgia quarterback, and, he's our offensive coordinator. So when he went to Auburn, that was interesting last couple of days.
Now, Trey, I only have 2 other hot takes for you. Would you like to hear them?
Yeah, go ahead real quick.
Like one of them.
Real quick. We got like 2 minutes. Go ahead. Hot takes. Go ahead.
Here's my other hot take.
Yeah.
I think Fields is going to end up in Atlanta. I don't think he's going to leave the top 10.
I like that.
Sam Darnold.
Fourth pick.
Sam Darnold, I never thought they were going to talk themselves even to keeping Sam Darnold after I saw Ohio State USC play in that bowl game years ago. Yeah. And we took it to him, and he is who I thought he was until they get a better coach. So I think Fields is going to be a top 10 pick. I think he's going to go to Atlanta.
I like that.
And if I had to guess, Urban is going to go to the Jaguars.
Yeah,
that is what he's asking about. He's asked for $12 million a year. Here's the other thing I'm going to guarantee you. He's going to be there no longer than 5 years. I would be shocked if he'd be the best 5 years because he'll get burned out. If he got burned out in college, he's going to go and get burned out more in the pros. And everybody talks about it there too. It's just like when they thought, oh, hey, why would you be so surprised that if he went down to Texas? Because for better or worse, Ohio State, their coaches in the past, that's the biggest job they ever had. After that, after Woody, then he was done coaching after he left. And Earl Bruce, that was his biggest gig. He coached right after Woody Hayes, and he wanted to go coach at a smaller school at Colorado State. Okay, and then John Cooper, he retired after that. Tressel never got back into coaching. So Urban would kind of be the first guy to then go to the pros. I'd rather have him go to the pros than another college football team because we recruit pretty well in Texas. So then we would get some of those recruits would probably go to Urban. Now, I don't think it's still going to be a good fit. It's just that I think he probably will go to the pros. It's just that for old Ohio State coaches, we just haven't seen it. He might very well have success, but, Nick Saban's a perfect example. Had to spend a lot of time in college, didn't have so much success in Miami. Boom, he comes back and has a ton of success at Alabama. So
do you think
I think he'll eventually go.
Woody Hayes still beat people up, like even after he retired?
If he did, it wasn't caught on camera.
That's unfortunate.
Hey, we're getting close here. Hey, we want to say appreciate Scott coming back on, diehard Ohio State fan. Go Dogs.
And so are we going to do a preview show Monday, fellas?
Nah.
I think this is our preview show, isn't it? I think we're going to go and do I will join again for the post game as long as we don't get our asses kicked. Now, if we hand out another ass kicking, yes.
Yeah, we're going to
I'll even do it drunk late. I'll even do it drunk late Tuesday.
There you go. Nice.
There you go.